Well, my latest endeavor to deal with my circumcised penis has been to do the opposite of what Dr. Becker had written about in his book, The Body Electric. If I can find the cover image. That doesn't do. Alright, we'll just go here. The Body Electric. There we go. So in his book, he talks about how to regenerate limbs of the body, literally. He never did the penis, apparently, and so we're left to our own devices to figure out how to do something to a body part that is prone to bleeding us to death if we should do things incorrectly. So how do we get the body to regenerate a foreskin without risking bleeding to death? In other words, without recircumcising, without poking holes in it to make it bleed, like another doctor in India, Mumbai, India, has done, and beat Dr. Becker's record of how long it takes to regenerate the tip of a finger, let's say, or a hand that's been mangled. How do we do it? Well, there are three essential ingredients, if I remember correctly the count. There's debridement, in other words, the wound, or rewounding if the wound has already been healed with scar tissue, moisture, and then you have your choice of either a negative pole of a voltage with very weak amperage. When I say very, I mean very, down in the nanoamp range. Or the positive pole of voltage, again with the same weak amperage, but in conjunction with silver. Now, regardless of whether or not you use electricity, silver seems to be helpful, but also a good nutrition, a physiology that apparently there was something left out of. He did imply that some people heal more readily than others. And my experience has been if you take MSM in large quantity in your drinking water between meals, combined with lactic acid in small quantity, and then add enough lemon to taste, and add a little piece of silver wire, pure 4/9 fine colloidal silver generator electrode wire, coiled and placed at the bottom of that beverage jar, and then a small amount of magnesium carbonate, in my case because I'm a little bit constipated. You do as you like. That combination of MSM and lactic acid helps to suffuse the body with so much oxygen that now I can eat fish and enjoy it and look forward to it and relish it. My whole life I've been a sickly child, a sickly person, being a vegetarian only out of avoidance of what tends to make me sick, not out of some humanitarian reason, and certainly not schizophrenia, which is why I was labeled, because I was considered megalomaniac, paranoid over eating. No, I have a sickly body born of an alcoholic mother, but she'd never want to admit that, God forbid, nor my brother for that matter, who was a head shorter than his cousin, only 3 weeks difference in age, and the only reason why our father did not suffer is because he smoked a pipe while we're all fasting on fruits and vegetables. So the metabolism slowed down, and he bought everything in bulk to save money, stored it in the garage, and the fruit fermented in the summertime. And come every winter, my mother got more sick than the prior winter, and we were living in an unheated home. She had a little space heater she would tote around from her from room to room, but she miscarried the pregnancy before me. And the only reason why she didn't right at the junction between the second and the third trimester, and the only reason why she didn't miscarry me was because at that junction, during my pregnancy, she had some sense talked into her by the chiropractor who was visiting her, giving her prenatal, neonatal care, pre-birth care, and she started to eat more variety. She started to eat cooked food, and that elevated her metabolism so she could handle the alcohol, because we were eating lots of sweets, Carrot and grape juice was a big item in the diet. For some reason, my father was pushing it on us. And my mother dutifully made this stuff and fed it to everyone. My brother rebelled by going and, when he went to school, swapping his lunch with his friends, and then when he would go to birthday parties, pig out in the hot dogs and be sent to bed without his dinner. He probably didn't want dinner anyway. It was hardly a punishment. So the nicotine in my father's pipe smoking tobacco probably elevated his metabolism sufficiently enough so that he could bypass what we were going through. But he suffered. The last year of his life, when my mother took us and separated from him, he suffered intense grief and over the separation and the banality of his work. He was doing a job he didn't enjoy doing, being a draftsman when he would have preferred to have been an engineer. But he didn't have the money, his family didn't have the money to send him to college to finish his education as an engineer. He had to stop premature and take odd jobs. And he came out to California anyway. So, in my endeavor to, and my mother in all her naturalness did not know any better. So the chiropractor who was there at my birth, there was also the attending physician who signed off on the birth certificate, mine. And he's the one who probably performed the circumcision, I would imagine, not the chiropractor. Be that as it may, even though I was born at home, unlike my brother who was born in a hospital, we were both circumcised. And I don't know about my brother, but I was tightly cut. And I attempted to grow some fox foreskin, grow some more shaft skin by tugging on the shaft. But I did manage, because I had a tight shaft skin during an erection, which was, a little bit uncomfortable. It wasn't really painful. It was a nuisance a bit. And I managed to loosen that up a bit, but in the course of doing so, I also managed to toughen or stiffen the skin so that it didn't want to grow anymore. And the more it grew, the more it thickened, and thus the more it resisted being tugged, such that if I wanted to get any results, I had to tug harder, and all I ended up doing at that point was damaging the penis. So I've managed to damage my penis at the same time as everything else. But I also managed to regenerate the sensitivity of the glands, because a lot of the various exercises or protocols that I was practicing, about 5 years ago, I stopped, was because, resulted in an increased sensitivity, the regeneration of the nerves under the glands, under the head of the penis. And so now I'm confronted with this problem in which I need a foreskin now more than ever to protect the head of my penis from abrasion. So what my approach has been since that time, when I stopped doing all those practices, was to baby my penis and cover it with a gauze dressing moistened with a special solution such as dilute Lugol's and diluted with distilled water, and a sandwich baggie to encapsulate the moisture to keep it from evaporating, and a rubber band to hold it in place surrounding both the balls and the penis. And then a silk G-string to cover it to make it look pretty. But it's not working. So, what am I missing? I'm missing debridement. I've got the moisture, and I've got the silver in my body, and now I have oxygen along with sulfur. And so I've got everything I need except the debridement. My body has forgotten the wound. By placing the scar tissue there to heal the penis back again after it was circumcised, a scar tissue basically means the body wants to forget that it ever happened and not fully take care of the problem. So Becker's approach was to reawaken the memory of the body, and that is to pay attention, basically, because the memory of what should be done is in the DNA. We formed our body perfectly, according to what the DNA instructed, at least, according to what the DNA instructed us to do while we were forming in our mother's womb. How come when we heal a wound, we forget to check, our cells forget to check the DNA to see what they're supposed to do? They just slap on scar tissue and as fast as they can and forget about it. Well, it's a nice survival mechanism. That's usually the rationalization people pose. But it doesn't take care of the problem. It doesn't replace what was missing. And so this is what Dr. Becker had to deal with in bypassing the body's short-circuiting or shortcutting approach. And he had to reawaken that motivation or intention. He had to reawaken the intention on the part of the body to pay attention to the DNA and check and compare the difference with the body and say, ooh, there's a difference here. We got to do something about it. And interestingly enough, he found that the signals were not carried through the nerves, the neurons. It was carried through the myelin sheath of the neurons. In other words, the insulation of the neurons were carrying the messages, and the cells of the body were communicating with each other to coordinate the regeneration. It wasn't the brain, because no signals were being passed through the neurons. It was the cells in the vicinity of the wound figuring out what needs to be done and taking charge. In other words, this was a completely subconscious response, an autonomic response, and had nothing to do with the central nervous system, let alone the brain. It's amazing what he discovered in this, all laid out in this book, except how to deal with the penis. He dealt with limbs. He hacked off the legs and arms of lab rats, 400 of them, and he did various cartilage experiments with rabbits, and he started out with salamanders, and he also worked with the other ones similar, newts. Newts are related to salamanders. So he got his start with salamanders, and he just went from there, and he helped treat people as well. But they were major wounds, flesh wounds, muscle wounds, muscular wounds, even bone wounds, but never a penis. And so I'm confronted with the problem, and, never internal organs. He talks about it, the future, this was before this was immediately after his funding got cut. He published this, he wrote this book and published it, because he was very outspoken, like me, and he had government funding, and it was cut off, because he appeared on 60 Minutes twice, and each time he was interrogated, he and his associate, not Gary Selden. I don't think Gary Selden was his associate. This is just a co-author, I believe. Unless I'm mistaken, I don't think that was his associate. But the two of them, in any case, whoever his associate was, forget his name, sorry, they both badmouthed the AC network electric grid for its health hazards to young children, because it's a statistical fact that children under the age of 10 are very high in stem cells, and they are the ones who are prone to leukemia due to AC fields if they're living all the time underneath an AC transmission line. Nobody else older than 10 has the problem, because anybody else over the age of 10 doesn't have stem cells suffusing their body, such as a pre-10-year-old has. Because pre-10, they can actually regenerate the tips of their the last digit of their finger if it's cut off, if it's not closed off with a patch of tissue or sutured. If it's left open and the dressing is just changed, at least once daily, if not multiple times, it will automatically regenerate the tip of the finger, everything, even the fingerprint. Wikipedia says the fingerprint will not come back, but they are wrong. The fingerprint will come back along with the nail and everything else about the tip of the finger. But that's it. So it shows that some regenerative quality is still there up to the age of 10. So how do you reawaken it in somebody older than the age of 10? And so Dr. Becker, one of the protocols was debridement of an old wound. And that's the one thing I've been missing, because I can't figure out how to deal with the penis. How do you debride the penis? I've tried cayenne pepper. I've tried poking it with a needle, but after I stretched it already and thickened the skin, I can't poke it with a needle. The skin is so thick I can't get through. And I bought surgical instruments, and I've never used them because, quite frankly, I'm terrified of severing an artery and bleeding to death. Because I've read a story in the LA Times in which this man masturbated with the tip of his vacuum cleaner. He took off the attachment, and he was using the tube while the vacuum cleaner was running, thinking he was going to use it as a pumping device, one of these vacuum pumping devices, to enlarge his penis, and meanwhile he's fucking the end of this vacuum cleaner tube, and it sliced his penis, and he practically bled to death. He came close to killing himself. So I'm very much aware of the dangers involved of trying to approach Dr. Becker's protocol in applying it to the penis. I'm very much aware of it. And it cautions me. What can I do? How can I do it? Well, I will tell you what my latest endeavor has been. Let's close out this window. By the way, Amazon is where you go to shop for this book because it's a great book. So what I've done now is I've taken these small 1-ounce bars of beeswax that I get on Amazon. I don't get the 1-pound blocks because although both are cosmetic grade and the 1-pound blocks are considered organic, I've eaten both and I've come to the conclusion that the 1-pound blocks will probably give me a stroke if I keep eating them. So I set them off to one side. I don't know what to do with them. I'm not into making candles, so I don't know what to do with them. They're just sitting there collecting dust in their packaging. But instead, I stockpile these 1-ounce bars. They come about 5 ounces, about 5 or 6 to a package. They're a little more pricey, obviously, but they're very high grade, and you can eat them, and they won't hurt you. I tend to melt them with oil, vegetable oil, if I want to eat them, so that way the wax will not stick to my teeth. You can melt them instead of oil. You can melt them with cheese, blend it in, or just put them in a pot of vegetables and melt it that way and disperse it. Because all you want to do is disperse it into a larger medium of something else so that it's not there in any large format to stick to anything, such as your teeth. You know, if you just got little molecules of beeswax floating around in your pot of rice, it's not going to stick to your teeth. Or if it does, let's put it this way, you won't notice. And being that I have no enamel on many of my teeth, due to grinding my teeth at night when I was younger, maybe I still do, but eating lots of raw carrots as a teenager, I wore down my molars, the enamel on my molars, and that instigated the loss of my molars, not the failure to brush my teeth with fluoridated toothpaste. It's the enamel that protects our teeth, nothing else. And when the enamel goes, you can kiss your tooth goodbye. It will not remain in your mouth. It may stay there for a while, but not forever. It's going to go before all the other teeth go, because the enamel is the only protection we have for our teeth. It's worth repeating because we have this silly notion it's bacteria, it's the acidity in our diet. Hogwash. Bacteria and acidity only applies to the tooth material below the enamel. That will go based on those two factors, either one or both. But the enamel is impervious to acidity, it's impervious to bacteria. So long as the enamel is intact with no ruptures anywhere along the surface of the tooth, above or below the gum line, our tooth will remain intact and stay with us for the rest of our life. So it's important we don't brush too much, too fiercely, because brushing will wear down the enamel. There's calcium carbonate. That's abrasive in the toothpaste. That's going to wear down the enamel. So, we do things that are a lot ridiculous. Anyway, so maybe the consumption of beeswax will help coat my teeth and protect them. Who knows? But I apply it to the penis. How to get something that's not a human, because on YouTube, it's not allowed to show human penises. So I got this picture off the internet of a horsey with an erection. By the way, I found a picture of an elephant with an erect penis so long it was dragging across the ground. It's a little too much. I don't want to go that extreme. I didn't know they had such big penises. I had no idea. But here we got a horsey. And so what I do is I take the bar of wax and I stroke the penis with the grain, I like to say, away from the body. Not towards the body, but away from the body. All sides of it. And to coat the penis with the wax. To seal, mostly importantly, to seal the tip that has no foreskin, so that the moisture from inside the body will not leave and evaporate. Concrete is semi-porous, and it's semi-wet. It never fully dries out when they cure concrete sidewalks. You know, they mix it with water, the concrete mix, and then they say don't walk on it for 3 days, let it dry. It never fully loses all its water. It's always got some water content. And plus, it's being fed from underneath, from the ground. There's a lot of moisture in the ground underneath concrete sidewalks that builds up because it has nowhere to go. It can't evaporate readily as off to the side of the concrete sidewalk where the lawn is, busy drawing the water out of the ground like crazy, and so we have to water our lawns to make up the difference. But underneath the concrete, the water doesn't leave because the concrete serves as a cap, not entirely sealing it like the asphalt does in the street, because the asphalt is rubber and an insulator. In most cases, it is non-conductive. But a concrete sidewalk is semi-conductive, electrically speaking, and it's also porous, and it also contains a certain amount of moisture. So you can walk or stand barefoot on the concrete, especially wet concrete, and you'll be grounded to the earth, be that as it may. So there's moisture underneath this concrete cap. Well, I don't have a cap on my penis. I don't have a foreskin. So I thought, well, why don't I use wax? So in the course of stroking my penis to apply wax, just like a surfer will wax at least the top surface of his surfboard so that his feet will grip the surfboard surface, I apply similarly wax to the penis head first, and then I'll apply it to the shaft. And of course, doing all of this stimulates blood flow, and I get an erection, which is a good thing because that wakes up the penis. You know, I'm debriding the penis, so it's slightly stimulating, but it's also slightly uncomfortable. It's not painful, but it is uncomfortable. It's not exactly a pleasant experience. That's why I go with the grain, so to speak. I go away from the body when I'm applying the wax. I don't go towards the body because I don't want to make matters more uncomfortable than it already is. It's an uncomfortable process, but only slightly so, but at least it's not painful. But I'm trying to minimize the discomfort. In which direction do I stroke to apply the wax? And it works. It does apply the wax. And if I don't do this, the sensitivity of the head of my penis actually hurts me if I allow it to be exposed to the dry air. Now, we have a certain amount of moisture and humidity in our air. You would think, well, why should it hurt? It does, trust me. When you don't have a foreskin secreting fluid and protecting the fluid that's being secreted on either side of the frenulum, keeping the head of the penis moist at all times and protected from abrasion against clothing and bed sheets and whatnot, then and if you've retained your sensitivity, which I've regained, because most people circumcised at birth lose their sensitivity while they're a baby, and they don't realize what they've lost. That's why one of the reasons why they circumcise people at birth, so they won't know, they won't complain, and they'll keep doing it, ignorant of what they're doing to themselves and what they're doing to their women folk when they fuck them, go in deeply, and the hair of a tightly cut penis is pulled up from the abdominal wall, the pubescent hair follicles, onto the base area of the shaft of the penis. And when it grows during puberty, and then you got all this hair on the penis, if you want to go in deeply into your honey, now you're rubbing your hair against the vaginal opening, the labial opening, where it's most sensitive. And my ex-girlfriend was going, hey, stop that. Don't do that. That's painful. Huh? What? And, you know, being a guy, I'm clueless, right? And she explained it to me, and then I realized what tightly circumcised penises do. It's a means of getting men to abuse their lovers, their girlfriends, their women folk, if, you know, that's who you're fucking. And the men, too, if you're doing men instead of ladies. It's the same thing. You're dragging the hair. And at the anus, if you're butt fucking somebody, a man or a woman, is a sensitive area. It's got nerves there. There are no nerves inside, but there are at the anus. So it's a means of abusing anyone during sex if you want to go in deeply. And most people want to. Most men want to go in deep. It's usually more fun that way. So it's a means of abuse, of mutual socialized abuse that's considered normal. Hello, you. What does the Bhagavad Gita say about Dharma, a-dharma, the opposite of Dharma? The sign of the times of adharma is the abuse of women. That is the sign of adharma, of lack of dharma, lack of supportive nature, lack of harmony, living in harmony with the life force. Hey, we're doing something wrong and we have not yet to wake up and pay attention. And so in Europe, they don't go through midlife crisis because the foreskin protects the production of testosterone. It's no small wonder that men go wimpy at middle age because their testosterone levels keep dropping off until finally by the midlife they're hardly producing any. So of course they can't get it up. What do you expect? While people in Europe who are not circumcised have no problems getting it up. Hello? And we consider this normal here in the United States, where circumcision is still king. It's not as popular as it was when I was born, but it's still king. So I do these videos for a reason once in a while, because it does upset me, although I prefer not to dwell on it. I prefer to dwell on nicer topics. But once in a while I have to go there because I have a hard time figuring out what to do about it. And so most of the time I don't want to admit to the fact that I'm clueless and I really don't know how to solve this problem, independent of the medical establishment, to take matters into my own hands. I'm sure it's possible. I just don't know how. And so I'm still groping for an answer, for a solution. And so this is my latest attempt. Take beeswax. I would prefer beeswax over paraffin wax, because why would I want to eat something from a petroleum, you know? Now, here's another little falsehood that we've been preached to and we steadfastly believe in. We believe petroleum came from dead plants and animals that fell into tar pits ages ago. That's a bunch of hogwash. Excuse me. We're also told that petroleum reserves are going to die out and we got to find alternative sources. Well, yeah, it would be nice not to pollute the atmosphere, but guess what? We're never going to run out of petroleum. You know why? It doesn't come from plants and animals from the dinosaur age. It comes from calcium carbonate, better known as limestone, iron oxide in the earth, and water under pressure and temperature deep underground. They have done this in the laboratory and created hydrocarbons exactly like petroleum, given those ingredients and those conditions. And the geologists know that every petroleum field that we drill into to get the petroleum is being fed by another one underneath, which in turn is being fed by another one underneath that in successive order, in serial order. So that if you drain the field up above that you've drilled into, all you have to do is cap that oil well and wait 20 years. And guess what? It refills from the oil reserve underneath it that we can't reach because it's so deep underground. And then you can start pumping again. So it's really a question of how fast, how quickly we deplete our oil reserves. Can the earth keep up? It's not that we will ever run out. That's impossible. The earth has plenty of limestone and plenty of iron oxide and plenty of moisture and plenty of heat and pressure deep underground to produce all the petroleum this planet will ever need, or we will ever need, if we want to go that route of burning fuel in order to get our energy. See, so we're converting that temperature and pressure that's stored in those three chemicals that have been converted into petroleum. So petroleum is like a battery, basically, or a log if you prefer to use it as an analogy. And we're burning the log. We're burning the petroleum to release that energy that the Earth's temperature and pressure has formulated deep underground. So it's interesting where petroleum comes from, but I wouldn't want to eat it. You know, they feed mineral oil to babies, you know. Why would I, or spread it over their bodies? Why would I want to eat mineral oil? You know, I didn't know any better as a kid, you know. I'm busy jerking off with, what's it called, Vaseline, you know. I didn't know. What do I know? Now, you won't find Vaseline in my household, or mineral oil of any sort, or you will find paraffin candles, that's true. But I'm too lazy to make my own beeswax candles. Oh well, can't win them all. But you won't find me ingesting paraffin wax or mineral oil. So I stick with beeswax for a very good reason. It's natural. It comes out of the bee's body. That's true. It's not vegan, but then I'm not a vegan anymore. Now I'm a fish eater. I eat fish. So what do you know? All because of MSM and lactic acid. I can now eat fish and enjoy it. So that's what I do. I coat my penis, but particularly the head, with wax. And of course I shave in order to remove the hair because it gets in the way. Any kind of treatment you give to the penis, the hair's not supposed to be there, and the hair just gets in the way. So although I don't shave my facial hair necessarily, any time too often, I do have to shave my pubic hair around my balls and penis, and on my penis in most particular, because that's the whole point. And also on the balls themselves, because the hair gets in the way of performing any kind of protocol upon the genitalia. The hair gets in the way. If I didn't have to do anything, I wouldn't bother shaving down there, except for the fact that yeast causes me to itch. So that's the other reason why I do have to cut or shave my chin hair, because I tend to scratch and itch there because of fungal, yeast that grows and causes it to itch. So that's no fun when oxygen fails to get in there, because yeast doesn't like oxygen. Now, if I had washed my face with soap and water on a regular basis, I wouldn't have that problem. But be that as it may, I'm trying to remember to do that when I take a shower, but be that as it may. So this is what I do nowadays, and I'll see how it works. It means doing something I don't normally like to do, masturbate. I usually like to think about other things, but hey, if I got to do it, then I got to do it. I don't know what else to do. And debridement is a form of stimulation. So it's going to create an erection and excitement. But in the course of doing so, I am also desensitizing the head of my penis to abrasion and painful exposure to the air due to the fact that I'm debriding it. So I'm doing the opposite of what I would normally think to do. Instead of babying my penis, I'm debriding it, which is the opposite of what my normal logic, my normal instinct, let's say, would care to do. In other words, a foreskin babies the penis, right? So I'm doing the opposite, because that's what Becker said to do. That was one of the protocols of waking up an old wound that forgot to heal properly. You debride it. And you have to do that initially. You don't have to keep doing it, but you have to do it initially to get the body motivated if you open the wound. But since I'm not opening the wound, I may have to keep debriding it to remind it, hey, come on, do something about the situation. Heal, regenerate, grow a foreskin for me, come on. We'll see if it works. Remains to be seen.